Hi, everybody. Welcome to Spot On. With me is lawyer Laila Sahyoun. Laila is an attorney in Montreal. And some of you may know, and a lot of you may not know, I've been going to Montreal for about 30 years. I would say that we dated for a while, and up until this year, we actually bought a place and we registered to do business there because the business scene, the startup scene, and the education scene has really taken off over the years. One of the things about the COVID situation, we used to go to Montreal, I don't know, 4 or 5 times a year. So we missed the restaurants, Layla. I could tell you that right now. So Olive and Garmondo, L'Espresse on Saint-Denis, and Graciella's in Old Montreal. So those folks have become friends over the years. So we miss them. So I want to welcome you to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Please allow me to tell you a little bit about Laila. Laila Sahyoun is a senior business lawyer and founder of Strategic Legal, a business law boutique firm advising small and medium-sized businesses. She has been practicing business law for the past 20 years and is an expert in mergers, acquisitions, and financing. Laila has a bachelor's in economics from Harvard University and a double law degree from McGill University in Montreal, Canada. She began her career as a business lawyer in a national law firm and subsequently held senior positions as in-house counsel in multinational companies. Laila sits on several boards of directors in the field of economic development, the arts, healthcare, and is a regular speaker on legal aspects of mergers, acquisitions, and financing. Laila, welcome once again.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to speak to you, and we hope to see you in Montreal more often.
All right. So, Laila, let's talk a little bit about predictions for what industries will play a key role in the next normal, or what I call the Great Pause, and economic recovery in Canada and Montreal, Quebec.
Right. And, I think that's the million-dollar question. I think worldwide, there's going to be, Montreal is probably, and Canada won't be that different than the rest of the world, except that we have various niche markets, which we're very specialized in. But I think in terms of the big picture, we had started talking about a potential new normal at the beginning of COVID. And then it became an actual new normal. And now we're talking about the next normal, which is what's our next stage of the economy going to look like? And I think, everybody agrees that it's going to have to be a lot more technologically driven. Innovation is going to play a very important role in many industries. And I think as human beings, we're going to have to be a lot more comfortable in embracing change, whatever that change means for us as people, for our economies, for our businesses.
Laila, what are some of the things that you're seeing that are going to be affected by this change in mentality, how we do business in Montreal or otherwise?
So in Montreal, we have, from a relations point of view, companies will start, I believe, having to look at choosing partners they work with that will make them more resilient. And so they may focus less on short-term gain, but more on relationships, either in essential services, clients in essential services, definitely. Business partners that are going to be more collaborative in case of another lockdown. So, the classic, just a little parentheses on legal, the concept of force majeure, right? Concept of being able to get out of your obligations or delay your obligations because of a force majeure won't apply in case of lockdown because it is not an unforeseen event.
Well, I think to your point, a lot of companies espouse entrepreneurship, right? But this is the time to not play entrepreneur, but be an entrepreneur, be able to do that. Because flexibility in the way you look at the market, flexibility in the way that you set up your operations and how you communicate it, market it, the legal structure around all of that has to be at the forefront today more than ever. Everybody talks about moving to digital, but the sad reality is very little people did it, right?
Yes.
But now, to your point before, this is kind of greasing the wheels a little bit, and we're forcing folks to take a serious look at that.
So Canada and Quebec are very much based on small and medium-sized businesses. The stats are, I was looking at stats the other day, and it's extremely I don't know how it compares to the US, but 98% of companies in Canada and Quebec, it's roughly the same ratio, are small, not even small, medium sized, but small companies, if we define it as 1 to 99 employees.
Okay.
Yes, it only, between small and medium sized companies, that's 50% of GDP, more or less. Okay, but essentially, when you think of 98%, in Quebec, small companies employ over 90% of the labor force.
Wow.
So what that means is Quebec, Montreal, Quebec, which I'll focus more on. That's where I live, and I work a lot in Ontario and Quebec, but we'll talk about Montreal. Niche markets are extremely important to make them competitive worldwide. Now,
so let's talk about that. You've got niche markets like technology, AI, gaming, innovate. Let's talk about that.
Right. So we're very strong in technology, and technology in a large sense. Gaming, AI, like you were saying, artificial intelligence, virtual reality, blockchain, as simple as apps, that disrupt the traditional way of doing things. Very strong on many levels. First of all, we have an excellent education system that is extremely affordable. I would almost say free as compared to some of the Ivy Leagues in the US.
I'm going to tell you that my daughter yesterday pulled me over and said, look, I guess there's some kind of school program, and said, this is the grade point average that it takes to get into McGill. So I'm really proud of her for focusing on that, and we want her to go to McGill.
So I think that Montreal is going to be very well positioned in this post-COVID era. And again, why? The niche markets are essentially, in large part, technology, like we mentioned, smart manufacturing, life sciences, aerospace, then life sciences, biotech is huge, education, and fintech. Okay? We look at those. A lot of government incentives for those industries. When I say government incentives, it can go anywhere from grants in the world of aerospace, very low interest loans. And we have two financial institutions, one Canadian called the Business Development Bank of Canada, and one in Quebec called Invest Quebec, or in French, Investissement Québec. So these are government funded, and they're a financial institution. Obviously, the concept of profit is very important. They need to make money. It's not free loans. But the idea is that it stimulates economic development.
How does that work in Quebec? Is that governmental organization? Is that a direct loan that goes to the company, or does it work through Scotiabank or RBC, or does it work through a bank?
Okay, good question. So they will either fund companies through debt, through equity, through hybrid situations. And they will fund funds. Okay, so funds that are specialized, that are private, they will invest in those funds. And then they would, what we see often also are traditional financial institutions, so banks, and a financing from this BDC, this federal Investissement Quebec financial institution, together that finance a company.
Okay, and I'm assuming all of these resources are available on the web. So if you're a company in Quebec or desire to do a business in Quebec, you just go up on the web and apply.
Again, you'd have to see which each one. I know that smaller programs you can, but it works a lot more like a more traditional bank, where you have your advisor or your director of your account director.
Right.
So from that point of view, it is a little bit more the traditional way of doing things. They are trying to go more online, but they still have to study the file, your credit. So from that point of view, that's not going to change. There's no free money anywhere.
Well, it's a little bit different here. We're used to just going online and the entire process is online. But obviously,
so again, going to our point,
that's
where there will be a need to fintech, right? I mean, that's the whole discussion right now. Is can they stay with that traditional way of doing business? I think not.
Right. Talk to me a little bit about Montreal's technology startup scene. I know we touched upon, certain sectors. What are the hottest sectors on the startup scene right now in Montreal? What are they doing?
So gaming is huge. Montreal is an international hub for the gaming industry. So you will have some very large companies like Ubisoft, and Google has in fact, I had a client last year who sold his shares, started a startup 3 years ago in the gaming world, and sold the business to Google. In 3 years, they loved it. And that's not, that's not the only case that we see. So what that does is it sets up a whole ecosystem for smaller businesses and startups that in that gaming world. So that's gaming in a larger sense. Again, artificial intelligence, there are a large number of startups in artificial intelligence, be it biotech is huge. Biotech, another client I'm in discussion. And think about even in this post-COVID era, you get AI with biotech. The clinical trials that used to have were lengthy, were expensive. That'll cut down on that so much. So AI in hiring processes, you name it, in so many different fields. In smart manufacturing. So AI, virtual reality. Again, if we think of entertainment. Gaming works. They've got it right. Movie Netflix, but we have theaters. It's a very cosmopolitan theaters. All kinds of artists, film festivals. Montreal's huge on festivals. It's a big part of their income in the summer. They're going to have to think about how they bring their art, call it, to the world if there's another lockdown. That's a disaster. We're locked down. Entertainment is locked down. The reality is, even the government is working, I think, 2 weeks at a time.
Yeah.
And the idea, so the summer is typically, according to scientists, viruses don't like the heat as much. The big question is going to be what's going to happen in the fall.
Right. Well, to me, consumer behavior is going to dictate all of this, right? It's how comfortable people are, right? It's the behavior issue. And so, the science might come out and say X, Y, and Z, or there might be no information that's conveyed from science, and the government might say, hey, we're open, but it really is going to depend on how people feel about going out.
And marketing will have a role to play in that too.
I will say this: we've been, fortunately, we've been overwhelmed. So because it's not just the marketing side, but it is the communications piece right now that is absolutely critical for companies.
Yes.
So we've been we've been blessed, but I don't want to be blessed in this type of environment. Let's move on from this and figure out what's next.
Right.
But listen, I want to thank you so much for being with me, for being on the show. Anytime I get a chance to talk about Montreal, and certainly the business of Montreal, which is to me, I know you've been there for a long time. You live there, but as somebody who's been going there for 30 years, just to see the amazing transformation of the city over the past 30 years has been, it's really been a pleasure. So
good. Yeah. Well, we hope to see you and American investments into our economy and our startup world, very much so.